This is Garis, Masculist, MGTOW flyers. That is 2-3 page essays on the themes of Masculism and MGTOW, written by and read aloud by Prof. Dr. Hugo de Garis. This is flyer number 245, entitled Masculisting the Media. Description. This flyer suggests how the Masculists can approach the broadcast media to reach the millions with masculist/MGTOW ideas so that whole populations can be made men fair. Now the flyer itself. Masculisting the Media by Prof. Dr. Hugo de Garis. Email profhugodegaris@yahoo.com. Website profhugodegaris.wordpress.com. This flyer is another in a series with the title Masculisting the ... This one concerns ideas and how the masculists can influence the media. Masculists are political animals. They're very conscious that it's not enough, MGTOW style, to change their own lives by refusing to marry, refusing to have kids, and spending their money on themselves. Masculists are sharply critical at MGTOWs for their lack of solidarity with other men, not caring about the gender plight of men, and the needed political solutions that are necessary so that literally hundreds of millions of men are not oppressed by a gynocentric culture. Masculists, on the other hand, look to political solutions to solve men's collective gender problems. One of the principal means of doing this is education, that is, teaching both men and women the major disadvantages of the traditional male role of being a manslave to fluffy, parasitic women. But how do you educate millions of people about ideas coming from the Masculists and MGTOWs? One way that individual MGTOWs and Masculists use is to make YouTube videos on MGTOW/Masculist themes, as I'm doing as I type this. The internet empowers individuals to be able to influence the world by sending out YouTube, in brackets, and other platforms, now that YouTube has stupidly started censoring, which will eventually lead to their death. Videos to the world that anyone, except third world backward dictatorships like China that censor the internet, blocking YouTube and other Western internet sites, can look at them and be influenced by them. However, there's a major disadvantage with YouTube videos, and that is that there are so many of them that of necessity a popular video will only be viewed by tens of thousands of people at most in the majority of cases. In other words, making YouTube videos is small potatoes. Individually, that is, a single video, is not going to have much impact due to the small number of people who will watch it. If one wants to influence millions of people, you have to get on the broadcast media, that is, TV, radio, major newspapers, etc., which reach millions of people. Reaching 1 million people is 1,000 times as effective as a typical video, which might be viewed by 1,000 people. So how can MGTOWs and Masculists get onto the broadcast media in a big way? One of the main problems in penetrating the broadcast media is the power of the feminazi mafia. The majority of journalists nowadays are women who have grown up with second and third wave feminism, who are intolerant of men's issues and actively try to block such material. For example, MGTOW and Masculist YouTube channels are now routinely censored, blocked, etc. by the policy of YouTube's Jewish feminazi CEO. I get the impression that the minority male journalists are now actually afraid to lash out at women through fear of losing their jobs. The feminazis have become too powerful, so how to overcome this problem? There are thousands of media outlets, so there are lots of opportunities to get one's MGTOW/Masculist ideas taken up by the broadcast media people. The first step is to motivate men's libbers to approach the media. Unfortunately, MGTOWs are, on the whole, media shy, because they feel it's a waste of time trying to get the media to listen to them, because it has been taken over by feminazis who are hostile to men's issues. MGTOWs are politically passive, a point of sharp difference between the MGTOWs and the Masculists, who are critical of the lack of solidarity towards other men that the MGTOWs have. Masculists strongly aim to attract the attention of the broadcast media because of its hugely more effective capacity to reach the millions. It's only a question of time before the broadcast media is forced to pay attention to the MGTOWs and Masculists, because these groups are wiping out whole populations with their rejection of marriage and paternity. Sooner or later, everyone will wake up to the idea that the populations of whole countries are dropping due to the birth rate being well below replacement rate. For example, in countries like Japan, Germany, Italy, Spain, etc., the birth rate is only 1.3 children per woman, whereas the replacement rate is 2.1. Since there's nothing more important to human beings than the survival of human beings, sooner or later societies must come to terms with the idea that their populations will be wiped out unless people start looking seriously at why the birth rate is plummeting. With 2/3 of young men rejecting paternity due to the toxicity of the divorce courts taken over by the hated feminazis, causing one married father in four to be financially massacred in the fluffy feminist hypocrite-dominated divorce court system, sooner or later the broadcast journalists will latch on to the idea that these MGTOWs are a real social force that have to be listened to, so these male journalists will overcome their fear of the feminazi mafia and start giving the MGTOWs and Masculists a voice. But that process will take time, even though it is obviously inevitable as the birth rate continues to fall under MGTOW/Masculist influence. The Masculists don't have the patience to wait for the years needed for the above process to play itself out. Masculists are approaching the media now, trying to get male media people to listen to Masculist ideas and report on them to bring these ideas to the millions. The Masculists do not feel that it's a waste of time to approach the media people, because the Masculists feel they have a strategy and a message that will work. The MGTOWs are cynical that being politically active, such as approaching the media, is a waste of time, because women are 51% of the voters, and women vote more than men. So any political attempts to get the gender laws changed to make them fairer to men, and thus reduce women's privileges in the divorce courts, for example, will backfire, because the gender politicians will not vote in divorce law reforms because of fear of the female bloc vote that could destroy them as politicians if women fear losing their divorce court privileges. But the Masculists have a way round this problem, and that is to convert women to becoming female Masculists through teaching them about men's issues, so that the sympathetic FIP women, FIP equals financially independent person, feel some solidarity with men and join with men to vote for the menfairing of the gender laws. That is the carrot approach of the Masculists regarding getting female support to vote with men on men's issues. The Masculist stick approach is to scare women into supporting the menfairing of the gender laws by threatening them with babylessness, thus forcing women to choose between giving up their privileges in the divorce courts, for example, getting custody of the kids with 90% probability, getting her ex-husband's house, half of her ex-husband's possessions, getting child support and often alimony on the one hand, or not having babies. Because MGTOW and Masculist influenced men refuse to give them their sperm, forcing women to remain babyless until they join forces with men and force the gender politicians to menfair the gender laws. Thus the Masculists have a strategy that overcomes the waste of time argument of the MGTOWs regarding being politically active in seeking out the attention of the broadcast media. Thus it's largely the Masculists who are actively trying to get the attention of the broadcast media for the time being, until MGTOW/Masculism becomes so large that the media are simply forced to acknowledge its existence. To deny it would be obtuse. How can the Masculists approach the broadcast media? This is a question I ask myself often, since I have experience of doing this very effectively in the early 80s in Europe, where I almost single-handedly put the men's lib movement onto the media map in Belgium, Holland, France, Germany, UK, Denmark and Australia. In Australia, I was on the front cover of Australia's equivalent of the US's Time magazine on men's issues. I was by then fairly fluent in 4 European languages: English, Dutch, French and German. English, Nederlands, Français and Deutsch. I was interviewed 150 times. I will return to Australia after an absence of some half a century, due to the generosity of my younger sister, who will buy a 1-bedroom apartment and let me live in it rent-free. I don't have a lot of money because my third wife, my first Chinese wife, stole half my savings that I could not get back from the Chinese courts due to a bias in favour of Chinese nationals, and especially from daughters of generals who were on the Long March with Mao Zedong. When I arrive in Melbourne, Australia, I will try to launch masculist consciousness in the Australian media. I will take the following approach. I will start by writing feature articles on masculist ideas for the main university student newspapers, and then contact the men's lib groups in Melbourne. I hope then they will organise a big talk at their university that we can invite the media to. If the feminazis try to destroy the talk, then the masculists organised can bitch slap these feminazi hecklers and contact the media with videos of the event and the bitch slapping. This will generate huge publicity and hence create a real platform for the masculists to state their case on the mainstream media, which is the whole point of the bitch slapping incident in the first place. If that doesn't work, I can try giving speeches at Melbourne Speakers' Corner to get a crowd over time that way. Sooner or later, some media people will come along to hear what the fuss is about. There are many ways to skin a cat. I had a great uncle, C.J. de Garis, who was a whiz at dreaming up ideas on how to get publicity for his product, dried grapes, that is, sultanas. He was nationally known, so hopefully I have some of his genes. I'll need to be creative to get the masculist message off the ground. I suspect it will be more difficult second time round due to the much stronger feminazi mafia presence that exists now that will actively try to stop the rise of masculism. But who knows? For all I know, maybe some female journalists might serve as the stepping stone to get the masculist message launched. From my experience in Europe, once one major article or exposure occurs, the rest of the media people follow the lead like sheep. Journalists are always hungry for a new story, hoping to be the first with a major new message that the public laps up. But masculism is new, so the public is not familiar with its ideas, so the journalists are constrained with what they can do. They can't be too far ahead of their public, otherwise the media people's message is lost on the public. Publicity is a numbers game. That is, when there are many media outlets, if one attempt fails on one try, then try again with different outlets. Keep going until one bites, and then use that to cause other outlets to bite. Use the herd mentality of the media. Its existence is to the advantage of the masculists. I will use an angry masculist approach rather than a poor me, poor men approach that is typical of the US men's rights movement, MRM. Most men are socialized to be tough, to be the main breadwinner of the family, so don't like the poor me approach of the MRM, but they will identify more readily with an angry masculist approach. That was my experience in the 80s in Europe. After a decade of angry feminism, the media then was more than ready to listen to the other half of humanity and to what men had to say. Hopefully the same will happen again with the new generation of male media people. Once the media snowball is rolling, it can just keep going because it is the biggest story of the century. That is, the MGTOW/masculists are wiping out whole populations, so they have to be listened to. Societies have to ask, why are men doing this, and how can men's issues be addressed? Once the masculists have the ear of the media, things can really start moving. The masculists will be able to socially engineer. They'll be able to put ideas into people's heads, both male and female. Women will become more female masculist as they learn about the horrors of the divorce courts for men and the hypocrisy of the lack of a para, etc. Men will be motivated to become MGTOW in practice due to the awful toxicity of the divorce courts, wanting to avoid facing a 1 in 4 chance of becoming a financially massacred divorced father. I will also write a book on masculism, which will make my credibility on the media greater. Putting Prof. Doctor in front of my name also helps that way. Anyone who is smart enough to have a Prof. Doctor in front of their name is obviously not stupid, so maybe his opinions ought to be listened to, even though they are very far out from left field. Masculist theorists are very conscious of the critical importance of getting the ear of the media. Education is a vital element of the masculist political program. Masculists cannot change society, that is, cannot see men being freed from manslavery, have the gender laws menfaired, without educating the public into masculist ideas. That much is obvious, so masculisting the media is a major component of the masculist efforts to liberate men. Cheers. Prof. Dr. Hugo de Garis. Prof. Hugo de Garis at yahoo.com. Website profhugodegaris.wordpress.com. YouTube channels De Garis, Masculist, MGTOW, Flyers, and De Garis Essays. Ciao.